Okay. All right. I will go ahead and get us started. Name's Matthew Durham. I'm a developer here at Grafana with the agent, and this is our first community meeting. So yay! Um, Most people out here are Grafana Labs people. It's awesome. We want everybody to be available to join and try to open it up. I want to take just a minute to talk about why we're doing this. One of the things is we want to be a more open project, especially as it grows. It was originally just a project by our esteemed colleague Robert there, and he was the lone toiler on it. But now the team's grown quite a bit, and as it's getting more uptick in usage, we want to develop things in the open, and part of that is opening up our meetings and to some degree opening up our roadmap, and we're going to talk about some other things opening up, and just trying to drive community involvement and get input from the greater community. So this is a chance for people to jump in. And I clicked admit to somebody. Oh, they're there. Okay. Hey, Andre, we were just getting started. So yeah, kind of the flow is I would say this agenda, people are free to add to it. I'm not exactly sure what the permissions are for it for non-Grafana people, but I will take a look at that. And if there's anything you all want to talk about, instead of just a bunch of Grafana Labs people talking, it'd be great if we had conversation from the community. So that's kind of my little spiel on the intro. I think it would be kind of neat just to introduce the Grafana Labs people so people know who they are. We won't do this every meeting, I don't think, but probably for the first one. So I'll go around the room and yell out people. So again, Matt Durham, Grafana Labs, Robert.
Oh, right. Sorry. You want to give like an intro?
Yeah. Give just like a little 30-second intro or something.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Robert. I was like the second programmer to work on the agent. Tom Wilkie wrote the first commit, and then I took it from there. And that was like back in 2019 or like early 2020. And now I am the tech lead by default, I think is the official term for that.
Jirafi?
Sure, I can go next. Yeah, I'm Jurasi. I'm also software engineer here at Grafana Labs. I work mostly on OpenTelemetry, but I do have a task about the agent on my queue that I promise to finish someday.
Cool. Gotham?
Hey, I'm Gautam. I'm a Prometheus and Cortex maintainer and recently moved to the agent squad to work on OpenTelemetry and help a little with the agent. Yeah.
Robbie?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Robbie. Excuse me. I'm new to Grafana. I'm a software engineer here. I'm only 4 or 5 weeks in, and I'm going to be working on the agent, so excited to be here. Thanks, Matt.
Mario?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mario. I'm actually on the Tempo squad, but a lot of the work that I do is writing bugs for the tracing bits of the agents, so then I can solve them.
Cool. Is there anybody I left out or anybody else who wants to give an intro? You're not required to by any means. All right. Cool. Yeah, I guess we can move on and talk about Prometheus Agent.
So I wrote this down and I didn't plan exactly what I was going to say. But as of last week before, maybe, we have officially taken the Grafana agent code and moved it to Prometheus. First, kind of like some of the details there. The code still exists in the agent. We do want to get rid of it and use Prometheus's code once that's released in a stable form, but that hasn't happened yet. So it still exists in 2 places for now. But generally, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about why we did that and will we keep doing similar things. So the Grafana agent actually started as a project because Prometheus team at the time weren't interested in supporting an agent-like mode. and we wanted to build it for our users of Grafana Cloud. But since then, like, Grafana Labs always tries to contribute as much code as they can. So the goal was never to like have a second Prometheus or, you know, fork Prometheus or anything like that. It was always, let's, you know, do this downstream, make it really good. And if Prometheus decides that they want the code, we'll definitely move it. So that has happened, and we've moved the code now. The code we've moved is specifically the storage bits. So essentially, since the Grafana agent launched as a Prometheus without a TSDB, the code relevant to do that is, instead of storing metrics to a TSDB, you store it directly to a write-ahead log, and then remote write will read from that write-ahead log. So that's the code we moved. There's a lot of other agent code, like the embedded exporters, the scraping service, and host filtering. Those things are still in the agent. And we're starting to work with upstream for some of those about how can we take the next iteration of it and also make those public. I think, you know, generally the strategy is, if we have ideas for how we can make things better, I think we should absolutely use like the agent as like a test bed for new use cases like Prometheus agent mode, or like, you know, host filtering, or like the feature that Robbie proposed that we'll talk about later. And then like once they're pretty good, move them around. Like we don't have to own things. We can share it with others. And I think while we already shared some code with Prometheus through like the SIG-v4 support back sometime last year, I think Prometheus agent is the first time we did a huge contribution. And I'm excited to do more of these, like given the opportunity. Does that make sense to anyone? Like, does anyone have any questions about if that makes sense as a strategy? Like, I think I had a blog post we published this week, maybe, about this, where I do kind of mention the goals of the agent being, actually, maybe I just pull it up. Let me faster. Blog. It's dead air now, though. We have a blog, right?
Yep. It's going to be in the document.
Nice, thank you. So yeah, like the three goals I talk about are, we want the agent to be the best companion piece it can be to the open source stack. So that's going to be Prometheus, Loki, Tempo, and well, I guess Grafana, even though we don't really interact with Grafana much. But then after that, I think enabling new use cases that make the first goal more possible is like the second big goal. And that's where like Prometheus agent mode comes in. That's where host filtering and all these other things we're trying to do come in. But then if you take those two, I think we have a pretty decent project. But we don't want to keep things to ourselves. So the third goal is to share those proven use cases with other people. So mainly the Grafana agent as a project tends to be more around helping others rather than kind of building one thing. Someone's going to watch a YouTube recording later and think, I don't know what he's talking about. So if anyone has any questions they want me to clarify for the YouTubers, please.
This is where we say like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, smash that like button.
All right. Andre looks like he has a question. And I'll repeat it since I'm not entirely sure if messages go on the recording. Andre says it's not clear what the Grafana agent and the Prometheus agent are different projects. Is Grafana agent going to use Prom agent?
Thank you. That's a good question. They are different projects. So we moved the agent that code I talked about. It is now part of Prometheus's standard code base. And as of this week, you can download like the beta release of Prometheus and launch it in an agent mode, which is using the same agent code that we're talking about. Once that is out of beta and is stable, we are going to remove the code from the agent and import Prometheus's agent code as a dependency, and then use that directly instead. So nothing changes for users, but what does change is how many other people can take advantage of this code now. So now you don't have to use the Grafana agent to take advantage of this code. You could use Prometheus.
Other question? All right. So the next topic we have is, should there be a public bug scrub? A little background is internally, for probably 3 or 4 months, feels like, we've been doing an internal bug scrub where we just look through the backlog and try to clean it up, find any issues that might have been floating around that we either resolved or want to add more actively to the backlog. And this is something we just do internally. I believe it's about every 6 weeks, to just try to resolve issues. And we had talked about part of our opening up is making that a public meeting, for people to either comment. You can always, if you have a comment, you can always add it to the GitHub issues. But this allows for maybe a more free-form discussion, and allows people to kind of come in and jump in. So what do people think about that? Then this could be, this open day by Grafana Labs or, community members.
I think it's a good idea because it gives community members who may have been filing some of those bugs the ability to come in and participate and maybe have their voices heard.
It is pretty boring. It is like an hour of looking through issues. So it wouldn't be the most exciting call, but I do agree with Robbie. Like, asynchronous communication is like the backbone of Grafana Labs, but I still think sometimes you do need that synchronous communication to resolve things, and it might be helpful. But on the other hand, if there was like 200 open issues, we wouldn't want every single one of those 200 people to be on the call to like defend why their things shouldn't be closed. So I think it's a give and take. Like, hopefully it would, if it was public, it'd be obvious to people when it's time to have a on-call discussion, or a live discussion, and not just like keep it to comments. Because I think the argument I'm making is it will take time to discuss the issues with someone who opened it.
Yeah, and I think planting the seed of it being open, that can grow and evolve better than if it's closed. So I guess, is there anyone who thinks we shouldn't do it? All right, it sounds like it is something we will do then. All right, so we'll probably get that scheduled, and we will probably add to the community calendar, and we'll also add links here, I assume. I'll add some to-dos here. Design in the, anybody got any questions about that? All right. The design in the open RFC.
All right, so in the spirit of doing more things in the open and trying to help build like a wider community around the agent, I had opened an RFC, which I will link in the Google chat, to talk about the process of how we do, like, designing new features going forward. I think I might have made a mistake with this one, and I think there's still work to do. The spirit of what I was trying to accomplish was to get consensus that we want to do things publicly first whenever it's possible, and we want to give people the ability to engage in ideas before like we have consensus internally. I think we tend to accidentally do things privately a lot. We have like a Grafana internal Slack, and it's really easy to just only use that. So it would take like active effort, and I think having like a proposal for how we make that active effort to do things more publicly was a good idea. I think where I failed was trying to be strict in what it meant to do a public proposal. And I do like markdowns for like code reviews and like history. But at this point, I'm not sure if we should. I don't know if it's a good idea to say big designs must be done as markdowns. Like maybe I don't know. I guess it's open for discussion. Like we want to have more things designed in the open. We want to allow people to, contribute designs. We want people to get engaged. Are there any concerns about like how that happens? Do you think we should just support whatever people want to use for proposals? Well, if there's no comments, I think the direction I'll probably go in is we'll keep an archive of public proposals. Now, those may be in forms of Markdown documents in a folder somewhere, or they may be Markdown documents that link to a Google sheet or Google document or whatever. I don't know. But I think I need a second iteration of this RFC in a way that is less prescriptive and more ambiguous, so that there's less effort to get involved.
Looking at other projects like Cortex, I do like having the proposals in a Markdown. It's easy to get an overview and look at the rationale and the intent of a feature that way. Yeah, so I do like that, at least for bigger changes.
I agree. I think one of the interesting things is this isn't the first time I try to do this. I've made a similar proposal to Loki, which we implemented very briefly. And the problem was Markdown is really nice to read. It's so hard to review. And I think like the tooling around code reviewing Markdown just doesn't exist. And I don't know if there's a solution to that. Like maybe we just try it and, we can see how we can improve the workflow around reviewing it.
Can you expand a little bit on what's difficult in reviewing Markdown? Because GitHub has a div tool now for Markdown as well, so you can use a rich div from GitHub.
So
if that's
the people really liked, or the Loki maintainers really liked the ability in Google Docs to have like the comments on the side, and to have that like not break up the thing you're reading. And when you review like Markdown, like I reviewed the Prometheus blog post from Bartek, and it was just so hard to keep track of what was going on because every few lines there was a break with someone's comment. It was pretty distracting.
That's true. Yep.
I mean, would a hybrid approach be that we do it in Google Docs, and then once it becomes more concrete, we export to Markdown? That also comes with the problems of both.
That's actually how people write blog posts for OpenTelemetry publication. So we are encouraged to first share a draft via Google Docs, which then goes through a first round of reviews, and then it's converted to Medium or whatever. So, two sources of the same data.
I think that's an interesting idea. It does bring back the "are we being too prescriptive" concerns. Like I could imagine a flow where it's open an issue, link to your Google Doc, and then open a PR to turn that into Markdown. I think that's good. But should we leave it open so that if people didn't want to do that, like the two different steps, they could just go straight to the Markdown RFC? I don't know.
I think that's fine, because I think at this point, just getting community proposals in pretty much any form that we can work with is a net win.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's good feedback, and I have enough to take a second shot at this Markdown, or turn it into a Google Doc, and then turn it into a Markdown at some point.
Okay. Proposal for remote configuration. Robbie?
Robbie.
If you want to give us a heads up on it.
Sure. So basically, this is trying to give us the ability to be able to pull the configuration from some remote source. We propose to support several remote sources like S3, Azure Blob Storage, GCP storage, among others, HTTP, HTTPS. And so the thinking behind this feature is that for users who may be running multiple instances of the agent, across their infrastructure. It would be much easier to be able to pull a single remote config, or they could be different remote configs, for example, but it definitely makes managing the configuration much simpler. So there were a few issues that cropped up. As you can see on the issue that I filed, some people have brought up some valid points that I think we need to address. And I'll also be updating that issue today and taking some of those things into consideration. I know Robert probably has a few things to say about this one as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the agent over the last 2 years, and I think I had decided at some point that there's a lot of things we could gain in terms of the project if we supported loading things remotely. And I am like months past the idea of that we should do this, and I've already dove like really deep into how we will do it. And I think that kind of caused a few problems. I think it meant that this proposal was in terms of like technical details and not why we should do it. And I think that's completely my fault. Like I asked Robbie to take charge of this, and it's unfortunate that the context got lost. So I am helping him, trying to regain that context, and I'm going to let him drive it. So there might even be new ideas I haven't thought of yet for how people might use this. But for the background context, I've been thinking a lot about like how to improve the scraping service of the agent and make it more generally useful. One of the parts of the scraping service that I don't like is the configuration API for like uploading individual files. I think, aside from like performance problems, mainly why I don't like it, but I think like if you could just say, you know, here's where these things exist as like a folder or something, and it's a remote folder, but you could just pull them dynamically. And so that was kind of like the seed of here's how we can start using things remotely to configure the agent instead of building in features into the agent that we would want to support, or, you know, whatever. The second idea was kind of brought from Matt of like, you know, in past jobs, he's worked where you can, in past jobs, he's worked at places where you can say like, here's an S3 bucket with a file, just load that for your config. And I think that's actually kind of generally useful. And ignoring, my room is running really loudly, ignoring the S3 aspect of it, if you could also say, like, here's an HTTP server that has a file, that HTTP server could dynamically generate a config. And most people won't write servers like that, but I do think that opens the door for command and control of agents. So command and control being like some server, you know, you configure it to have like a fleet of agents or tags or whatever, and then agents will connect to that server to say what their config is, and that server will like build it at request time. I'm really rambling here. I hope like those two ideas were enough to to communicate why I started thinking about this. But right, okay. So off those two ideas, if I think we were able to reduce it down to its simplest form by saying config files could be URLs. And like that is like the simplest way to like enable both of those use cases. And I kind of got excited about that because I figured it's really generic and a lot of other people could benefit from this, which feeds way back into like what I was saying earlier about like sharing use cases with other people. So rambling aside, I think I want to help recapture that context and try to justify it more rather than focusing on just here's exactly how we're implementing this thing that Robert Frado already decided he wanted to do. And that's not fair. And we should take a step back and allow people to say like, no, actually, we don't think this is a good idea.
Thoughts, questions?
I just had a comment. I think it's a pretty good idea, especially when you think about deploying agent in straight on VMs and stuff. It's always a hassle to get the config deployed, and then you have a change and you need to rebuild your machine. So yeah, have some startup script or whatever that pulls it, and it would be nice just to have it supported out of the box. So yeah,
I do go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah, the use case that I used at a previous job is we had thousands of Windows machines in a data center. And, we obviously didn't have tooling like, Kubernetes or even config management. And rolling out new configs was extremely problematic in pushing those files. So making the switch that we could just pull from one central location reduced the state that we had to push, and also really helped with configuration drift. And it was a big win when you don't have all that infrastructure, that Kubernetes or console or something, or even something like Ansible or Chef or containers, which we didn't have any of that. So it made life much easier.
I think there's a pretty strong counter argument where, like, I could, why can't I just run a tool on my machine that syncs, like, S3 to a file? Like, sure, that's fair, and like that would work. But I think once we have this in place, this is opening the door to more interesting use cases. So, for example, and Gotham might not like this, for example, what if the password file fields for remote write could also be URLs? Then you could say, like, here's my password in Vault. And then, like, every request, it would pull from Vault and, use that password for remote write. And then, like, other file-based things where it makes sense could also, be URLs and also be dynamically loaded. And that's where I think most of the power comes from that wouldn't be equivalent to, like, just running some syncer that, like, reads from S3 and puts it to a disk.
Yeah, and just a recording is Andre would like to have the ability to have remote config with some kind of overrides, so that they can, centralize scraping config. And I definitely feel like that kind of ties in with Robert's idea of just if it's an HTTP endpoint, you can kind of, do what you want. If you add a tenant ID to that HTTP, you can generate that config on the fly. And there's probably some more mature solutions in rolling your own HTTP endpoint that could be utilized there, but it opens the avenue. Andre, did I get your point there? Are there any clarifications? Okay, awesome.
Please, like, feel free to, like, if you're interested in this, get involved in the proposal. I might ask Robbie to, like, have a second proposal that, like, addresses the concerns that we got in comments. Otherwise, like, the comment list will just keep growing and growing and growing. But if there's a second one, we'll link to it from the first and close it. And I'm not sure yet if I'll actually ask you to do that, Robbie.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments on the about the proposal? All right, so now we're kind of in the open area of if you all have any feedback about the meeting, about agent, or any, now's the time.
Well, I do have a question regarding integrations. So what's the I don't know, policy, or what's the what I'm trying to ask is, so say if I wanted to add an integration for Azure Service Bus, would that be a valid thing to export stats from that in the agent, or is that too specific? Or
So
what level do you want the integrations to be at? What
I think generally for now, I want integrations to be useful in a way such that it interacts with the other subsystems of the agent in some way. So it might generate Prometheus metrics, Loki logs, tempo traces. As long as it, like, meets one of those three, I think it's fine. But if it was, for example, like embedding file beat and writing to Elasticsearch, then I think it's kind of that would probably be out of scope.
Yeah, so an integration that exposes metrics from a service is within scope, basically.
I'd say so. Like definitely like open an issue and like talk about it like as a proposal, and then we'll have a discussion. But it doesn't sound like a no or like an obvious no.
Yeah, cool.
And then Andre asked, Robert, can you share briefly about the integrations using Operator? You linked to some issues the other day.
Yeah, so we're currently trying to get the operator to be in feature parity with the agent. Currently, it's lacking integrations and it's lacking traces. Now, I'm not working on traces yet. Someone might at some point, but we are currently working on the integration support. One big issue is what happens when someone deploys two CRDs or custom resources that are both the Redis exporter integration. That would mean today, because the agent only lets you define one Redis exporter, you would need to deploy two agent pods to do that. Now, I started implementing it, but then I realized like the code was a nightmare, and we already want to enable more than one instance of a single integration. So my work has shifted to doing that first, and it's currently in progress and should be out within like a next release or two, where you could configure the agent to have an array of Redis exporters, not just one. And that'll make writing the integration support for the operator so much more easy. So much easier.
Speaking about the operator, I really do think it's a nice addition. I'm running it myself, and I haven't had any issues or anything with it. So yeah.
Cool.
I also added a pull request to JSONnet.libs to generate the JSONnet things for your CRDs. So we can create those straight from Tanker or stuff like that.
I didn't see that. That's awesome. Where is this?
It's a JSONnet-libs on GitHub. It's a library of different auto-generated APIs from CRDs.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it'd be good.
I added the pod logs and Grafana agent and those.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I think we one of the big problems we have across Grafana really is we have a lot of projects that receive contributions in respect to another thing. So like if someone opens an issue in like Grafana Helm charts for the agent Helm chart, we're not going to see it. And I don't know how to solve this yet. It's a weird issue. Yeah, it's just random thought. Yeah, I'll check out those JSON libs. So that's the thing I wanted to do, but didn't have the time to.
I'll link it in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll add that link to the doc. Thank you. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Does anybody have feedback on how the actual meeting went or things you'd like to see different? It's only our first one, so I don't know if we really got a rhythm yet. We tried to emulate the other community calls. But as always, we can veer from that based on community feedback. Cool.
Or to attend again, would you want anything to be different?
Yeah.
I kind of like the structure of this one, having a few set pieces to begin with, and then open for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't want to load it with what necessarily the agent is doing. We definitely want to have, more conversational, I think is always good for this kind of thing. All right. Does anybody have anything else? All right. With that, we will end, and then I should have looked up when the next meeting was, but I will put it in the document.
the third Wednesday of the next month, which might be canceled
That might
because it's
be.
December. But we'll see.
That would be the 15th. So that's
Yeah.
pretty possible then.
I think I'm actually on PTO then, but you can run it.
Yeah. So it looks like December the 15th will be the next one, back to our normal date. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's input and everybody coming here. And feel free to, we have the channel in the Grafana community, the agent channel. You're more than welcome to bring up anything there, or I believe we added access so you can add topics you'd like to see in the document. And appreciate y'all coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Have a good day.
Thanks.